welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials, where we're going to take a look at some everyday cybersecurity lessons that we can learn from this week's ThreatTraq stories. I'm here with Matt Kaiser. How you doing, Matt?
Doing all right, Don. How you been?
Great to have you here. Let's talk about the story you brought to us, which was very frightening and actually very sad, about ransomware attacks on hospitals. Tell me a little more about that.
Sure thing. So this story is that the DHS and FBI put out an alert to a bunch of hospitals and healthcare providers, telling them to be ready for a possible ransomware attack in the coming weeks. This seems to be tied to the Ryuk gang, which operates, we believe, out of Russia. They seem to target pretty specifically hospitals. It's not sort of this is one of those gangs that will sort of go after you and not just spread their malware everywhere and hope for the best. Unfortunately, it seems that some of these attacks may have already occurred. We're not getting a lot of the details, but some 6 or so hospitals or healthcare facilities have reported either ransomware attacks or some sort of unexplained technical issues that might be attributable to ransomware.
So what lesson do we want folks to take away from a story like this? They may not be working at a hospital, but I'm sure there's lessons we can learn here about ransomware and about being targeted and not falling for the scam.
Yes. So in this case, we believe that the initial attack comes through a phishing email. It tells people to click a link that leads them to a Google Drive or Google Doc, and from there leads to the actual malware. I think the best defense in this case is to just be aware of the types of phishing that are possible, for people to be wary of the emails that they get that they aren't expecting if they come from outside of the company. And just in general, just to be, I guess, on guard, in particular if you're in the healthcare industry, that this is something that people are trying to do currently, actively. Just to be aware of it. And if you see something and you're not positive what it is, report it to your security team so they can take proper action.
And especially don't click on unknown attachments or download documents that you weren't expecting, right?
Absolutely. And in a lot of these cases, these will be sent, and they'll be sort of a lure attached to it, a message saying that you have to open this immediately. A few things happen to have to be done actually immediately. So if you get a message like that from the outside saying that something is super urgent, I would recommend that you take just a second and pause and think through the situation before you go ahead and click that.
Now, we also had a story that Chris brought to us about vulnerabilities in Windows. What is the vulnerability? What do people have to watch out for?
So this vulnerability is in Windows. It has to do with a component of Windows that works on cryptography. And this vulnerability can be used for privilege escalation and sandbox escape. What that means is an attacker could use it to go from a regular user to a more privileged user, or to break out of a sandbox environment that's meant to sort of contain code and processes on the machine. The good thing is that this by itself is not remotely executable, or remotely exploitable, which means that someone would have to have another means of getting their code onto the box before they could run this attack. So it's not an immediate glaring threat, but it is something that could be valuable to an attacker once they've already got a foothold. The downside is that there will not be a patch for this until maybe a week from now.
So what do you do in the meantime?
I think in the meantime, you are extra careful about the software that you run or install on your machine right now. Make sure everything is patched as high as it can be. Again, there is no patch for this specific vulnerability, but the attacker does have to get a foothold to get on. So anything you can do to make that difficult for them is going to help prevent them from using this particular vulnerability.
And lastly, Tony brought us a story about 6 cybersecurity lessons in 2020. We're going to be doing a review of 2020 in the coming weeks. I imagine rather than go through all 6 of what those lessons were, what was there any lesson that jumped out to you? A big lesson that you took away from this? It was a lot of things about things that happened in 2020. The fact that so many people working from home, working remotely, and all the dangers that poses. So, what's the big lesson for you?
Things are very different right now. The IT situation for a lot of companies has changed drastically. I mean, they've had to move, in many cases, a lot of the workers who would have been coming into an office to work from home or to have some other remote work possibility. And that means new technology And that means the possibility of introducing not only complexity, but possible vulnerabilities into the way things are set up, or by adding software that already has its own vulnerabilities. I think anytime that there's change in technology, you have the possibility for vulnerabilities. And I also think you have the possibility for social engineering. I mean, imagine you're being told you have to use a brand new system you have no documentation on, that this is the way things are being done now.
It seemed to me one of the other big lessons there was that some of the things that can affect cybersecurity are not cybersecurity related necessarily at all. And we really just have seen that this year, and you have to be aware of that.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I think the point is that information technology responds to whatever problems have been created in the real world. I mean, you don't just have IT for the sake of IT. You have it to solve a problem that's come up, whether that's remote access, encryption, some kind of secure messaging. These things are all a response to the necessity of working in a way that doesn't put people close enough to each other that they might accidentally infect each other. And security, IT security, has to catch up with that and find the gaps and patch them. So ultimately, a lot of IT security in this past year has been in response mode, simply catching up to and dealing with the new gaps that have been put in place. Not to say any of the old technology or old problems have gone away. There's just more things that are brand new to everyone that everyone has to catch up on. And maybe it's not new technology, but it's new amounts of load or a new user population with its own specific use cases and possible issues. I mean, that's just what you've got to do.
Well, great advice, Matt, and thanks for being here today. Thank you all for watching. If you want to keep up with great advice and great stories like this, please like and subscribe below. And if you want to go deeper into any of these stories, click on the playlist below. We'll see you next time.